And welcome back to the course. Let's excel together. And we have gone quite a bit. We've gone quite a bit from intro to entry, formatting. We've now delved into functions, formulas and functions, and we've covered arithmetic, basic arithmetic operations. We looked at statistical functions, some statistical functions. We looked at some conditional functions. I even asked you to do some things. I trust you've done so. The more you get your hands, dirty, you roll up your sleeves. That's how you improve proficiency. All right. You watch these videos, you try to assess files, to practice what you've learned and try to make it more complex, or should I say, make it appeal to your current reality. Okay, here what we're talking about or sales. Perhaps you're dealing with something different, maybe office supplies, or some other thing. Try to rearrange your data set to suit your own operational need. Okay. Um, in this session, we'll be looking at reference functions, right, or lookup functions, reference or lookup functions. And one of the areas where they come in handy is like our data set. Let's take our sample data set here. So we have regions, we have sales reps, we have the items, units sold. We're able to use formulas to arrive at the total cost as well as the selling price, and then we also took it a step further to also calculate the profit. Okay, to calculate the profit. Now, however, these sales reps, let's assume, I created a sheet to say each sales rep has an agreed percentage of which they're supposed to apply for commissions, based on what they've sold rather, based on what they've sold as commission to them. So for each person, I have this list here. For Jones, I'm just going to take off these columns, right? They're not needed. For Jones, right? For Jones, we have these entries for Jones, all the sales rep here have gender, we have IDs created to them, and then we have this, going to label it properly to be just rates, rates. Let's assume these rates are for their commission, for the purpose of this lecture. So here now, perhaps we want to do a comparison or to perform real data, do data tags to say, Jones, what is Jones' commission, of these sales? This profit is perhaps for the business outfit or the organization, the team, but as a sales rep, he has been able to achieve this um, value of sales, right? What is his commission? If we look here, we can see that Jones has 15%, right, of whatever sale he is able to, let me confirm the gender, he is able to garner, right? So 15%, and you have different sales rep and different rates that apply to it. So a reference function would be a function that can easily check to see Jones here and then go to see a table that has the agreed rates and return this rate to, well, wherever the rep is Jones or wherever the rep is Kivel, Jardine, as the case may be. Now there are several functions, to perform this. In terms of popularity and accessibility, the VLook, which stands for vertical lookup, is one of the most popular reference functions. There's HLOOKUP. It's not so popular in usage, but it's there. If you understand the VLOOKUP, which you will, in a few seconds, you would be able to easily run with the HLOOKUP. Okay, so the VLOOKUP stands for what? Vertical lookup. Now we're going to apply the VLOOKUP function here, to say equal to, like we've learned, the rule of thumb, everything is preceded by an equal to symbol. And then next is the name of the function. So we're going to go VLOOKUP, we're typing it, and then we see it out there. So it looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table and then returns a value if it's true. Okay, now because of my screen open, you can't see all of this here. So just get the definition again, the description. Say it looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table. Okay. Now, in as much as Excel has the table feature, essentially everything in a spreadsheet application is in a tabular format, you recall. Okay. So let's now apply this. I'm just going to hit the tab key to automatically complete that function for me. So now I'm seeing the arguments. You recall what we said, the arguments that are expected in the VLOOKUP. So the first is the lookup value. The lookup value represents what you intend to search for. In this case now is this rep. Okay, you can only select one rep at a time. So I'm going to click the cell where this rep is, right, which is cell C2. All right, I hit the comma to move to the next argument. So the next argument is the table array or the table. Okay, now the table array represents where you feel um, this value you're looking out for and the value you want returned are both stored. Okay, that's what the table array argument represents here. If you recall, the definition was that it searches for the leftmost value in a table. So the table array is, we want to search for Jones. I want to search for Jones in a list where we are sure that Jones there's an entry for Jones. Okay, and in this instance here, we want to return the commission for Jones. So we're setting that, oh, in this list, in this array or table, okay, we are setting that our value Jones, or we're optimistic that Jones is resident in that, can call it a repository. Okay, so we're saying, oh, this is lookup value Jones, go and search for Jones in this table array. So for us in this table array, it's in a different sheet. Okay, so we're going to click on the sheet. Now I want you to pay attention to the formula bar. So the next thing you're saying is that the sheet name is what appears there. Okay, and now I'm going to select the range. Okay, I'm going to select the range. Now take pay close attention. I'm holding on the left click. All right, you're saying I'm selecting the range. Now if you can see some other things that are appearing on my screen as I move my cursor to my right, you were saying 11R X1C. That says 11 rows by one column. Okay, we have 11 rows selected and just a column selected. And when I move my cursor, my mouse to my right, you're seeing 11 rows, 11R X2C, 11 rows, 2 columns. Okay, in this case I want to cover the range that has the commission rate, and which is in column D. Now I want you to also observe the formula bar. All right, as I also move, it's also adjusting the range automatically. Okay, and I'm going to move it to where I get to column D. Now I can release my left finger, so it doesn't get sore from just holding it down for too long. Okay, so now I have my table array. Now I'll hit the comma, and the next argument for a VLOOKUP is to specify the column index number. Now the column index number, what does this represent here? Let's look at the first argument here, which is our lookup value, Jones. And then now we've also specified the table array. Okay, so now this our range of selection here, A2 to D12. In this context of this function, it sees it as a table. Now we're saying if you find the value Jones in here, return a particular value. By default, the VLOOKUP returns just one value. So we're saying return a single value, okay? But we can specify. So since our data set here, the range, it spills into 4 columns. You recall what I was saying, to take a look at when it was saying 11R X1C, 11R X2C. That was 11 rows, X 2 columns, 11 rows, X 3 columns, 11 rows, X 4 columns, because A, B, C, D, that's 4 columns. Okay, so the column index number is to specify which particular column. It's a vertical lookup, it's looking at it vertical. Okay, so now the VLOOKUP is going to be looking at this vertically. So it's going to search the first column, second column vertically, third column, and in this case we have a fourth column. So we're saying if there is a match in any of these column, I want you to return a value. Specify the column you want it to return the value, hence the column in that's what the column index number represents. So in this case here, I would say I want it to return 4, the fourth column, column number 4. Now I'm going to type in 4 and I hit the comma, and the next is range lookup. Now this is to for it to specify what kind of search do you want the VLOOKUP to conduct for you. Do you want it to conduct an approximate search or an exact search? In most instances, we would like to go for an exact search, right? To say where it's an exact match, and which is what I want in this case. So you can type false for an exact match. You can type true. You can use your mouse to double click on either of them. Also, um, speaking in computing terms, the numbers 1, 0, -1, they also represent certain values or conditions in this case. 0 represents false, 1 represents true. But since we're just coming up to speed while you progress, we're just going to double click, false, and then I close my parenthesis, right, or bracket, and I hit enter. Now, when I hit enter, it takes me back to the sheet where this formula is being entered. Okay, and you see it returns 0.15, which also represents 15%. Now, given what we've learned earlier, I can simply, yeah, it's already saying accounting value. I can simply select, say I want it to be expressed in percentage, right? And we have decimal points here. I'm going to undo that and just select click from here, percentage style, it's 15%. If you go back to see, we're looking out for the first value, C2, right? And Jones really has 15%. Now, just to make you understand the column index, if I were to say 3 here and hit enter, it returns EJ001. I come here and I see EJ001 is the column ID, right, which represents the third column from this range that was specified. Okay, so sometimes your range may start from B to D. So if it starts from B to D and you want to reference D, D in this instance will be the third column. Okay, it's important to understand this even as you're practicing. I'm just going to undo to return this back to 4, so we can see it here, that this is the fourth column, my column index number. I'm saying return the fourth column, all right, the value in the fourth column. Now, in case we have a data set such as this and we want to use autofill like we've been doing, to copy the formulas down, there's a downside to it. Not necessarily a downside, it's because of the nature of autofill that autofill also increments, right? You recall while we're using it for our earlier data set to increment the SNO columns, the serial number columns, right? We use the autofill to increment this. So when we dragged, we double clicked, it just automatically filled these cells up based on the perceived order. Okay, now if we're to apply the autofill here, we won't get an accurate result. Why? I'm going to double click, like our autofill like we've learned, and here I'm seeing 19, I'm seeing 21, 17, 16, excuse me, and then below here I'm now seeing any, which is returning an error. Okay, these are types of errors, which I will take my time to look at in the latter part of the course. We're going to explain error types, what they mean and what the recommended lines of action are. There are different kinds of errors, but we'll go into errors later in the course. However, at this point, NA, you're just seeing that it's an error. An error is something different from your desired output. The expected output that you were hoping to get, you're not getting that, you're seeing an error. Now, if we compare the formula from the first entry here. Now let's look at the first entry here. I was saying look for C2, right? And look for it in this range. Look for it. I'm going to just use the keyboard to go down, the cell below. You see, now the formula here is C3, which is correct. Look for the value of C3. Now, but compare the range is going to look for it in. It's A3 to D13. It was actually A2 to D12. Now it's A3 to D13. I observe that as we keep moving, these are incrementing. C4 is incrementing. This range is also incrementing. It's also incrementing till it gets A6. It now gets to A7 to D17. And at this point, it's not seeing, it can't find that value in A7 because here A7 is Andrews, okay? And when we come to this point, C7 is Jones. So Jones from C7 is not same as the value in A7, which is Andrews, okay? Now, to address this, while you're using formulas as they adjust their their range as you're doing automatic autofill, is to understand better referencing, cell referencing. Now, there are two kinds of reference. There's absolute reference and there's relative reference. Okay, don't I'm going to explain that, right? Absolute reference means that you're saying this reference is static, it does not change. Okay, so even if I'm dragging down, it should not change, it should just remain, keep it this range locked in, irrespective of what is happening around it. This range should be static. While a relative reference, if you're in the case like in this case where you're using an autofill, it's relative to, it's proportionate to that measure that you're applying to it, so it's incrementing, and that's what happens here. Just focus on the formula bar. A2 to D4 is incrementing. Okay, is incrementing. Same with the C6, they are all incrementing. Okay, so in this case it's combination. Here we don't mind having this C2 increment, okay, because we want it to be searching for the next values here, right? However, we want this reference to be static now, or absolute. To do this, to lock your reference in is to enclose your reference in double quotes, sorry, not in double quotes, in dollar symbols, right? Dollar symbols. So you just go into the formula bar and then enclose them in dollar symbols. I do not know why it has to be dollar, okay, but that's the convention in Microsoft Excel, as at the time of this recording, is that to lock your range, to lock that reference, you enclose it in dollar codes. So you could manually go in, you impute the dollar, you know, before and after the A, you impute the dollar. Or if you're like me, who prefers keyboard shortcut, I select, I highlight the range, okay, as is highlighted, and I hold down the F4 key, right? The F4 key. In some machines, you may need to hold down the function and F4 key. In some machines, just the F4 key. Try to find out which is applicable to your device. Okay, and I'm going to just do that to log that in, and I hit enter. Okay, now it's different here. Now I'm going to perform that autofill action again to double click, and you see that I actually have no more errors, right? But the values return. And if we take a look at C7, cell C7, where I have Jones here, right? Jones is returning 15%. Now, if I were to go into this point here to look for A7, right? A7, so A7 is not there, but it's going to look for C7 to say Jones, and it's 15%. Initially, it was checking for Andrews, and Andrews wasn't a match. But here he's doing the right thing to look at it vertically, to say Jones, and Jones has 15%. So it rightly returns 15% because when you look at the formula again, the range is locked in. All right, the range for that for that particular argument, the range, the tabular range of the VLOOKUP is locked in. The table array rather is locked in. But my lookup value, I am allowing it to be a relative reference because I want it to search for each name as it's rolling down. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna share share the file, right? So you can play with this. I would also advise, that you try to personalize it, to your own peculiar operations, try to play around with it and see how you can perform these VLOOKUP actions on your own. Seeing the VLOOKUP, I'd like you to also take it a step further and look about HLOOKUP, right? The HLOOKUP function, same arguments, right? Lookup value, table array, row index instead of column index. Okay, are you saying row index instead of column index? The VLOOKUP is looking at it vertically, the HLOOKUP horizontally. Personally, it's not so much in usage, but it's important to just know it. You never can tell when it comes in handy. Based on what you've seen so far on the VLOOKUP, I want you to practice the VLOOKUP, master it, get familiar with it, and then try your hands on the HLOOKUP. You're running into any brick wall, share your pain points with the comment section below, and I'll be happy to respond to them as soon as I can. Now we're done with the VLOOKUP. There are other reference functions, okay? There are other reference functions, and I'll just introduce them briefly. Index and match. We have the index function and we have the match function, okay? We have the index function and we have the match function. Now, the index function basically, excuse me, is used to, let's impute it here, index, to return a value or reference of the cell at the intersection of a particular row and column in a given range. I know it seems like a little bit too much. Basically, the index function, you're saying that you're going to give the function, the Excel application, a range of cells and specify a particular point to say, oh, from this range, I'm going to specify a particular point, return the value in that point. It's kind of like saying return the cell in that particular point. When you're saying like intersection of a particular row and column, you recall while we're trying to define some terms in our earlier models, I really would advise you take your time to familiarize yourself with the things we've covered up to this point. We said a row is an intersection between, a cell rather is an intersection between a row and a column. So when you're saying this description here, say the intersection of a particular row or column. So here we're feeding a range and saying, and then we're setting a particular point to say where this intersection occurs, return the value. All right. This is plenty talk, Let's get into the action. So I'm just going to complete the index function and specify the array. Now let's use the pen. And I'm just going to use this array of D2 to D10. Okay. There's the array. Now, I want to specify the roll number, okay, which is the required argument. The other arguments are optional. Remember when I said anything you see in square brackets is optional. So I'm just going to say 3. Now, before I hit the enter key, okay, I want us to look, both of us to just look at this array here. We said D2 to D10. So that's D2 to D10 selected. So if I say 3, what's the third part there, the intersection, that would be one, one, two, three, pencil. Okay, let's close that, hit enter, and we see pencil. Okay, we're going to play with it again. Now look at D2 to D10. I'm going to check for the seventh bit. So this D2 now is the first point, second point, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. 654. Let's go with the fourth one. And from this our counting here, the fourth one is a pen. So let's see if the fourth record is going to return a pen. Okay, and you can see it's a pen.
Now, perhaps I'm just making it, limiting it to just, even if I should extend it, to make it a multi-dimensional array, where it has not just a column, because it's like a single column, let's make it E, to put E. Now, it's giving me a reference function, an error, because in this case here, I'm, I need to also specify the column. So if I should say column 1, I see pen. If I should say column 2, look at this, I see 27. Now let's look at it, D2 to E10. Let's look at it. Fourth row, second column, D2 to E10. So D2, so this is second row, third row, fourth row, and then the column to the right, okay, 27. Now you recall when we're talking about the VLookup as well. So we said if your table range, what you're specifying it as your table range in that your VLookup there, if it starts from E to G, your column index will start counting E as column 1, F as column 2, and then G as column 3, right? It's important that you really understand these little details, right? These little details are the nuances that could cause errors, in your function. Now, this is the index function, what the index function helps you to achieve. Let's look at the match function. What does the match function do? Okay, so say the match, it returns the relative position of an item in an array that matches a specified value in a specified order, right? Basically, it's returning an identity where it feels that it has found a match for what you're searching for. Let's look at it in action. Again, we're saying lookup value. So let's say, excuse me, lookup value, you can specify a literal text. Okay, you can specify a literal text. I'm just going to say lookup value, look for the value in cell B2, and let's, in the lookup array like we saw in our VLookup functions, let's come to this point here and say check for this in this array. Okay, check in this array. All right, and now we also have an argument, optional argument, to specify the match type. So here I want to specify an exact match, which in the case of the VLOOKUP, it was false. And you recall I said in computing terms, you could say 1 as true, 0 as false. 1 being true for the VLOOKUP is an approximate match. In this case here, they're saying less than exact match, minus 1. Okay, now I'm just going to keep it at an exact match and close my parenthesis. Okay, now I'm saying NA is returning an error. Excuse me. Is the match here is returning an error. Okay, saying B2. Now let's find out why is this giving an error. Okay, B2, because it's not found. I included B2, and here what we have, what I went to search for was this value that just has the reps. Okay, so that was a mistake on my bit. Okay, so I was supposed to use C2, not B2. So I'm going to change this quickly to C2, hit enter, and now I see the value returned as 1. Why is it returning 1? You recall what the description of the match function says, that it's returning the position of where it has found a match. Let's just look at that definition again. All right, it returns the relative position, okay, that matches that specified value. So here now is returning 1, because Jones in this range is on the first row, position 1. Now because we put our lookup value in, excuse me, in this array, so it's the first item in the array. If it was to be, excuse me, horizontal, it would still be the same, right? The reaction would still be the same. Now if I'm to say not Jones, not C2, but let's say C6, that's, so let's say C6, and I hit enter. Now it's telling me that in that range of A2 to A12 in this sheet, it's on the fifth, is the fifth value. So that means from A2 on this sheet, A2 here, so this is the first value, second value, third value, fourth value, fifth value, and that's correct. So you see what the match does, it returns the value, the position, okay? It returns the position as a number, okay? It returns it as a number. Now you're wondering, I'm talking about reference function, we've looked at the VLookup, and then I said we have index and we have match. The index and match function, you must have seen, and you saw when we were working on conditional functions with the if, where I made mention and you saw that we could nest functions in an if function. You can also next some other functions in the Microsoft Excel application. The index and match is one of such, and the index and match, when nested together, they really give a huge a huge dynamic approach, to your operations, rather than just say this, let's put it into practice. Now let's recall that the index function needs you to return a numeric value, all right, to specify for the row, okay, and if you want to specify the column depending on the array, all right, it needs you to return a numeric value. The match returns for you, the index requires that you enter a numeric value for your row and your column arguments, right? While the match function returns a numeric value. Now, to put both of them together, you know, still trying to replicate this, is to say index, index. So the array here is what value we want returned, okay? And in this case here, what we want returned is this. This is what we want returned, right? Okay. Now the row number. This is where we now start with our match function. We input our match function, and we're saying that in this match function, look for this person C2, right? This rep, okay, and check for it, okay. Check for C2 in where, in this range here, okay. We close it, we say we want an exact match, hence I'm putting 0, okay, and I'm closing that match function. So now the index function, I can specify a column if I so desire, or I can close it and I hit enter, and we'll get the same value, okay. It may seem a bit much, but just try try to slow it down, okay, slow it down. Let's remember what the index does. The index returns the cell, the value of a cell based on what a cell is, which is an intersecting point between a column and a row, like a cross. So with the index function, you're specifying to say, oh, this is the range, right? This is the column, this is the row. At this particular point, return this value, which is return the value in this cell to me. So in an index function, you need to impute the range, the range. So let's look at it there. This is our range, right? D2 to D12, it's our range. Next is to specify the match, to specify the value, the number, right, which is that intersection point, and the row number. Here we did that by, instead of just imputing it manually, we try to take a dynamic approach to it to now deploy the match function. And the match function performs a search for you and then returns the position of that search. It returns it as a number, hence we remember when we did it here, 5. It returns it as this number. Now if we were to use absolute reference our absolute reference, as we've done before, you would see that I'm just going to lock it, right, make this fixed here, okay. I'm also going to lock this, here to make set this fixed. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. Now if I drag down, you see we get identical same results, as the VLOOKUP function. But the index and match offers more dynamism, because you could do a whole lot. Now, you're in this instance, we're saying, oh, return this particular value. If you wanted it to return not just this value, but the value below it, you could just simply add one. You see here that it's returning 19 because it's returning the value below it. Why is it returning the value below it? The match is returning one as a number, and then I'm saying add one to it. So the index is receiving two. Okay, I know it seems like a lot to take in at this point. Okay, so just allow it to just go back, watch this again, watch this again, and allow it to marinate, and then try to get your hands on, get your hands on it, get your hands on it, and where you have challenges, do not hesitate, share them, and together we're going to work it out. Okay, you're doing so well, this you're getting to the tough part, and this I tell you for me is one of the um this is one of the stick points, in the learning curve. Just try to see how you can really grasp this, so watch it over, share your concerns, your pain points, and I'll be happy to go over them with you. Perhaps someone would have even answered them in the comments below, and together we will excel together. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next bit where we'll be talking about text functions, and we'll take it the next level. Thanks, and bye for now. Keyboard shortcut.